All right. So welcome everyone for the last session of our How I Built This series. This time, Dominic Norton, a really creative, innovative person, well known on Twitter and TikTok as well. Dominic, isn't it? About his no-code skills. So excited that you are joining us today, and you are going to show us how you built a Chrome extension, Google Chrome extension, which is exciting. I think we all use those kind of extensions a lot. So yeah, for me at least, it's exciting to see how you build it. So yeah, looking forward to it, and yeah, take it away, Dominic.
Okay, so today I'm not sure how if everyone's gone through the Chrome extension learning path, but this today actually is a lot more advanced than the learning path. The learning path is relatively simple. Today we'll be integrating some interesting technology in this Chrome extension. I'll tell you more about it in a minute, but let me just share my screen, just introduce myself for those that don't know me. So on social media, I also go by Mr. Hackathon. I do have a long history of participating in hackathons. Probably haven't done it for a while, but I used to participate in a lot of hackathons. Uh, we're going to go over advanced Chrome extension. So it's probably more intermediary to advanced with what I have for you today, but it's definitely a lot more advanced than the learning path is. A little bit about me. I started my journey actually in programming. So I'm born and raised in London, and here in London, in primary school and secondary school, so early school ages, MySpace was huge, and so you can probably guess how old I am based on that. But MySpace was huge at the time, and at the time you could customize MySpace layouts using HTML and CSS. And in the school I went to, people would pay other people that knew how to do it money to be able to do it. And it's how I wanted, is my entry into tech because I was more entrepreneurial. I wanted to learn. And then in the early stages of the internet, it was relative, it's still easy to learn now, but it was easy to learn how to do it. And this was my introduction to tech. So from HTML, CSS, it was easier to learn JavaScript. I got a little bit older. I learned Python. Now I don't do programming as much, but still, I do still love to do it. Which actually connects to what we're going to do today, because what we're going to do today is actually more low code than complete no code. Um, Also, in the summers when I was young, I got sent to summer camp where I was making kites and doing photography in the dark room. But one of the things that we did was web development. And at the time, Adobe Dreamweaver was one of the biggest platforms in the web development space. I don't even think it exists anymore, but it was one of the earlier no code tools. Um, from then, I grew a little bit older. I actually maneuvered out of tech. As I grew older, I didn't do as much tech because I got more into sports. I become an international athlete and I got a scholarship to go to school in America. When in America, I did architecture for 3 years and I did construction for 2 years. And my professors quickly learned I was neither a traditional architect or architecture student or a traditional construction manager. I loved technology. That was my interest in both of them. And they kind of guided me to becoming a virtual design and construction engineer. So I was dealing with 3D printing, drones, VR, AR inside the construction and architecture industry. Since then, I've really been a content creator, making content for Makeup Air, making content for different no-code brands and their learning paths that they have. Obviously, 100 Days No Code, Creator in Residence, and I also came through OnDeck's first no code cohort. But that's enough about me. Just wanted to give you a brief overview. We're going to
Dominic,
make, yeah.
that's an impressive road. I'm a sportsman as well. I love sports. I was curious, what kind of sports did you get your scholarship in?
So I played basketball.
Ah,
I played
cool.
basketball, still kind of
Yeah.
play locally now, but all my friends are professionals now. I'm a certified agent now, so I manage some of them now. But I definitely don't play as much. I don't play at that level anymore.
Cool. And I see this picture of Chelsea. So you did something for Chelsea. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was interesting. There's lots of, the fortunate thing about being in London is that there's lots of like incubators and accelerators, and a lot of the local football club have some kind of business accelerator connected to it, and Chelsea is one of them. So Chelsea have what they call the Chelsea Foundation, and a part of the Chelsea Foundation, they do a lot of events and activations for entrepreneurs. And they had
Nice.
me in as a speaker and facilitated some workshops there. I think that was like a little bit before COVID.
Cool. Yeah.
So before,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like Colleen said, I also didn't know a lot about this background. So it's great to hear these things. Yeah. Awesome.
Oh, sorry. Hello.
Yeah.
I think my camera might have went off, but I'm still here.
All right. Yeah. I can hear you. Yeah.
Before we actually jump in, I'm going to show you, if you can still see my screen, I'm going to show you 2 Chrome extensions that I have right now. That are active right now. I don't market them the best as many indie makers, but they are active. One of them, if I just find a website, let's go bitcoin.com. One of them is to verify crypto websites. So this is not the official Bitcoin website. So if we go to this and we activate my Chrome extension, it will say it's not verified. And what it's doing is validating this particular website against the coin market cap database. So this is a this is what I call a beginner Chrome extension. This is very, very simple. It's binary. It looks at the website the user's currently on, and then it looks at, is it in the database? If it's in the database, it shows one thing. If it's not in the database, it shows this. That is beginner entry level Chrome extension. Another beginner entry level Chrome extension that I have, if we go to right move. So let's go to the 60 million. So this is, as you can see, all over the world, you have these property sites. As you can see, there's no comment section. There was a thread that blew up on Twitter of like millions of people saying, I'm maybe exaggerating, thousands of people saying they wanted to leave comments on sites like this. And I was like, yeah, I can make that pretty quickly. And so I did make it. And obviously this one has no comment. This listing has no comments, but you can leave comments on listings through this Chrome extension. Then if I go back, it might be gone now. It blew up on TikTok, which drove the users. Again, this is another, I was trying to find a video for you. Let's see if I can find it. Okay, I might not be able to find it. Okay, it's here. So it's a basic video. As you can see, it had 116 comments, so people just giving feedback on the Chrome extension. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people asking questions. But again, built with no code, showing the power of no code, showing the power of like taking what people are saying on Twitter or on some social platform and building a product out of it. What we're going to be building today is slightly experimental. So if I open up here, what we will be building, if I go to this, is we will be building a tool that summarizes content for a second grader. So if we look at Investopedia here, this is one of the most popular financial websites. I can highlight a text. It's going to take the highlighted text and summarize it for a second grader. So if you have technical documentation, it's going to summarize that, but it's going to summarize it and simplify it. And what I also have here is this kind of, this is where I'm storing it, Airtable, and I just display it in some kind of iframe. Right now it's really hacky, but it's to show you can build this Chrome extension, and this is what would be an MVP for me for some kind of summarization app that's a Chrome extension. So we're going to go ahead and build that. We're going to build it using a couple tools. So we're going to use Bildr. If I actually close this out. We're going to use Bildr for the Chrome extension. We're going to use Make to tie everything together. We're actually going to use OpenAI for their AI summarization technology. And we're going to use Airtable to actually store our data. So where we're going to start is Bildr. And this is going to be a speed walkthrough of the learning path, because this first part is actually the whole learning path. You create an account through 100 days of no code. You do have a code for some kind of free trial for this. I'm not sure if publicly they're giving out free trials, but through 100 days of no code, there is a voucher or some kind of code to get a free trial. You're going to create a new project. You're going to name your project. What should I name it? Let's just name it Summarize. I'm going to change my region, and I'm just going to start from a blank project. We give Bildr a chance to load. So this is our blank project. This is our canvas that we can now work from. One of the first things you're going to do, and you can see the pop-up, is you need a page to work on. So you can either use these templates to create a page, or you can start with a blank page. I almost always start with a blank page. And we click to blank page, and we will see in a second a blank page has shown up. And so one of the first things I always do is rename this page, and I'm just going to name this index. And I also resize the page. And one of the reasons I resize the page is because I generally resize it to a width of about 400 for Chrome extensions. Otherwise, it's just going to be way too big. Then the second thing I want to do, or the second thing I generally like to do, is just test the Chrome extension feature and the Chrome extension functionality is working as desired. So one of the first things I almost always do is just throw a heading on. And we put that there, and it's going to show up in a second. So now we have a heading. And what we have to do almost always with Bildr for Chrome extension is create flows. So flows are Bildr's internal way of like automating processes. So if you want to automate copy and text, or making an API request, or like just whatever you want to do in the Chrome extension, your chances are you're going to do it through flows. And so what we're going to do is create the first flow, and we're going to say get domain. And that's just us naming the flow, but now we need to give it an action. And these are all the pre-built actions that Bildr has. And this is why no code is so good. I don't have to create a listener using code. I don't have to add code to do lots of different interesting things. I don't have to add code to integrate Stripe or to create user sign-in. It's all there for us. But we want something specific. We want these Chrome extension actions. And what I want, just to set this up and just to test this, is I want to use this. For our summarization app, we're not going to need this particular action, but just to show you this initial step, and this is almost what I always do just to get started. What I'm doing is I'm going to grab the domain name, and I'm going to save that domain name as the domain variable. And then it's going to ask me what flow do I want to run after that. So now I have that. I want to set the domain in this placeholder text. So what I'm going to do is create another flow called set domain. I'm going to go and find the action set value. And I'm going to set the value in that heading. And the value is going to be a variable named domain. So we have that. We have the two actions. We need to tie them together now. If I go back to get back domain, it says, what flow do you want to run after this one runs? And we're going to say set domain. So we have those two tied together, but we need to trigger this. And we're going to trigger this on page load. So to trigger this on page load, what we're going to do is find the action run Bildr flow, or Chrome extension run Bildr flow. And I'm just going to check I'm using the right one. Okay, so we're going to use a different one. We're going to use run flow on page. We're going to use run flow on page, and now when the page loads, it's going to run a flow on page. And what one do we want to run? We want to run our get domain. So the order of it is this page load flow runs automatically every time. And this is going to run a flow on page, and it's going to run our get domain flow. It's going to get the current domain, and then it's going to run the set domain flow. And if we go to the set domain flow, that's going to set the domain in this element. So this is the basic components of a Chrome extension. And what we're going to do, and you'll see why all of this, or at least part of this, is important a little bit later. We have to add a URL route so we can publish it. Obviously, this is going to be our index page. And we're going to publish it from development to test. What I'm just going to call it is maybe how I built this. So verified. Now it's created the subdomain. I published it to test. Perfect. To get the Chrome extension now, what I do is export Chrome extension. I create a new Chrome extension. And now I have to name this. And I'm actually going to rename this from summarize to how I built this. And I'm just going to name this. I'm going to name the short name HIBT. I'm going to give it a description. You'll see why doing all of this initially helps in the long run when you're developing it. So I've got to set the main extension page URL, and I've got to set the deployment. Obviously, it's on test. I've got to add an icon, and generally when I'm just creating something to test, I just add the Chrome icon. We have our width at 400. I like to place it on the right panel, and we pop up. You can trigger it to pop up automatically on specific URLs, but we're not going to do that. And now we can export our Chrome extension. Now we exported it, we need to unzip this. So I'm going to extract, unzip. Now I need to install this to test. And to install it to test, I click this puzzle icon, manage extensions. I'm gonna hide this previous extension I have. Load unpacked. And then you load your extension you just unzipped. Now to get it to display on the taskbar, you're gonna find it in here, how I built this, and pin it to your taskbar. If anyone has any questions as we go through this, just feel free to shout out your question. Now we want to test this. I'm just going to go to Twitter. I am going to click that. And we have an error. So we need to figure out why this is not displaying. And chances are it's something to do with my flows. So I have my page load, run flow on page. I'm running the get domain. Get domain. Let me just refresh this again. And then it has the set domain. So I'll go to my set domain. So we're going to publish and try again. If not, I'm probably going to change the page load action that I'm using. Okay, so we can see twitter.com. If I go to Google, you should be able to see google.com. If I go to Amazon, you should see amazon.co.uk. And why is this important? Because when you initially do it this way, anytime you add something in Bildr, it will automatically publish. So you don't need to republish the Chrome extension again. You can see it live loading. So I'll just show you by adding another element. So I'm going to add something here. Just a random text. So it just says text box. All I have to do is click publish again. Now, when we refresh the page and open, what we can see is our text box. We never have to re-upload it again. And the same thing has happened. The same thing has happened with my production projects too. So this is where the learning path actually stops, but we're going to take it a lot further. And to take it further, we have to understand a couple things, especially when it comes to AI. So we are going to use OpenAI's APIs to summarize something. And so OpenAI is free to use. Well, technically, it's not free. It's very, very cheap to use. I've, in all my time using it, I probably paid only a couple pounds. It's extremely cheap to use, and it's free to actually create an account. So you don't have to pay anything up front. And that's what I meant. And so what we're going to do, because we haven't pre-programmed any models, we're going to use some of their existing models. So if you go to beta.openai.com/examples, you can see some of their pre-existing models that you can test. The one we want to actually test is summarize for a second grader. And you can see it here. Every model here, and most models for competitors too, you would have a prompt and you have a completion, or you have a response. So you have to give the AI some kind of prompt to tell it what to do. If we open this in the playground, it'll make more sense a little bit later. So we have a constant, which is summarize this for a second grade student. And then we have a variable, which is the input of the user. So if I actually go back to, or I open Investopedia again here, and I just grab this text and I replace it here. And I say summarize this for a second grade student. It should just summarize it for a second grade student. And I would have to actually change some of these settings to get a full sentence. But if we grab a little bit more and just see what it does. This is not formatted in the best way. We're just going to help this a little bit. Oh, it says it's overloaded with requests. Interesting. I'm going to change the model.
Everyone is trying it out.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what it does. I'm not sure if it's okay. It's fine.
Yeah.
And it's summarized it. So this is what we want to do. And this is my process. I usually go to the playground, or I go to something I fine-tuned. and I use Raiku to actually fine tune my models without coding. But I go to something I fine tune, I go to the playground and I test it here. The next step I do is actually test the API request. So once you get into the low code space or even the coding space, testing your APIs becomes more and more important. And I use Postman to be able to test this. Postman's free, you don't have to pay anything, but it makes it really, really easy to test your requests and format your requests in a way that the server is actually going to understand. And if there's an error, you can troubleshoot that error. So you can see I'm testing all kinds of things here. But if I go to OpenAI and I go to my summarize for a second grader, and I'm going to kind of speed walk you through how requests are structured. So you have different things here. So post is basically saying, hey, you're basically giving the server something. Get is asking for something, and all of these other things, we're not going to get into all of them, but all of these other things are different ways of interacting with a server. It could be open API, it could be I have NASA here, it could be obviously AI, which is another AI service, or WhatsApp. There's lots of different services with lots of different APIs and different ways of interacting with them. And you can learn how to interact with them. If we go to API here and we go to docs, if they have an API, they're going to have documentation. And in their documentation, they're going to have something like this that tells you how to actually make a successful API request. It gives you examples of the request, and it gives you examples of the response. And sometimes it even tells you the error codes and why things will go wrong if they go wrong. And this is what we're talking about, Bildr, and when we get into APIs and advanced Chrome extensions, being more into the low code space, because it's a little bit more technical than we talk about a lot of the time in the no code space. So I have summarized for a second grader here, and I actually didn't save my previous request. So what you have is an authorization, and obviously you can't see my entire code, but with OpenAPI, you have your API code, your API key, which is important, and you don't want anybody to really see that. You have headers, you need this content type application JSON, and you have a body, and this is the body that you're going to have. This is all important because this is going to go into Bildr, and we're going to put this into Bildr. If we actually test this, we need to change this if we want to test it directly in Postman. So I need something like this, summarize for a second grade student. And I'm just going to replace that. This /n/n is basically the gap, the spaces. If we go back, that's the spaces, space, space. Again, if I'm moving too fast, please let me know. If there's anything that's not entirely clear, also let me know. So I'm trying to copy, paste. Okay. So what should happen when we press send, we should get the summary, and we know the response should look something like this, because this is the sample response. So we send it. Okay. So it doesn't just send the text response, it sends us all this additional information, which is good. It's good, it's what we want. But this is what the user actually wants. All the other stuff helps us troubleshoot, it helps us organize what we've been doing. So we know this works. Now, how to put this in Bildr? We're gonna go head back to Bildr. And what I want to do is make some changes. So I'm actually going to leave this here for now, just so we know the Chrome extension is working. I'm going to remove this, And what I want to do is add an additional flow. And I believe I want to add this flow on page load. This flow is called get selected text. So what's going to happen is, as a user, you're going to select the text, and then that's going to trigger a whole bunch of things. We jump back. I'm going to give this selected text a variable name. Selected text or text. I'm going to give it name selected text. And so now when we highlight the text, it's going to save it as a variable called selected text. That's perfect. That's exactly what we want. What we then want is somehow we have to get this to OpenAI. Whatever the user selects, we want to summarize this, but to summarize this, we have to get this to OpenAI. How do we do that? We're going to do that using a service called Make. If you're familiar with Make, or if you're not familiar with Make, it's similar to Zapier, or it's similar to, I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing this right, NAN. I'm not sure I'm not pronouncing that right. Or similar to Parabola, in that it allows you to automate processes between applications. And we're going to do this to connect Airtable, to connect Bildr, to connect OpenAPI. I'm actually going to turn this off. And as you can see, I have lots of automations here from different workshops. And what I'm going to do is just head over to my folder with AI, and I'm going to create a new scenario. That's just basically saying I'm going to create a new automation. I'm going to use the webhook because I need to send the data from Bildr to this webhook, and I want to create a custom webhook. I'm going to just give this a name. I'm just going to give this a random name for now. Should be okay. And I want to copy my address. Right now, Make is listening for data to understand the data structure of the data it will receive. And so we need to then create something that sends it from Bildr to Make. And the way you do that with Bildr is flows. So I'm going to create a new flow. And the flow is going to be called API request. Okay, I'll just call it API request. I'm going to use the API call action. Let me just give that a second to load. I'm not sure if I clicked on it. And we're going to do post. We pasted our address from Make there. I just like to copy and paste some of these headers that you typically have. Again, if anyone has any questions through this, please let me know. Oh, we have it there. So I put it in the wrong place. In the header, you're going to have content type application JSON. In the body, what you're going to actually have is the variable. So this is going to be from variable and our variable selected text. And it's going to save the response as a variable, and it's going to save the response as an API response. And we're not going to work on this for now. What we just want to do is help Make determine the data structure. So what I'm going to do is publish that. And remember, it's live publishing. So I don't have to deploy my Chrome extension again. I just have to activate it. I'm just going to make sure I have this right. I'm going to check my other projects. Okay. Okay, I just want to publish again, just in case. So what we're going to do is head over to Investopedia again. I'm just going to open my Chrome extension. Okay, we know it's picking up. We know something's working. So what we want to do now is we just highlighted it. Obviously, we didn't. Usually what I would put is I would have it display here just to know it's working. But if we head over to make, we maybe will be able to see the data structure. Oh, I've got to press OK. Click run. Okay, let's try this again. So I highlighted it. It should have sent this to make if everything was correct. And we know not everything is correct. So we have to figure out what is going on. So I have my page load. I have my Chrome extension, get selected text. It saves it as selected text. Okay, so I didn't connect it to the API request. The flow I want to run is API request. So I need this to run. I didn't have the API request running. So what I'm just going to do is publish this again. I'm going to tell make to listen for any new data. I'm going to refresh this page. Just open my Chrome extension so I know it's working. Okay, I selected that. And again. So we're just going to double check in my previous project how I have it. So text. Okay, that should be fine. Let's just refresh again. Let's tell it to listen. Let's refresh this page. Okay, something's not sending. We need to work out why it's not sending. Okay, and let's try. It's listening. Select a text, API request, run that. Goes to API request to post. Let me just double check this is the right address. And my parameters, it's getting the variable. Let's just make sure it's getting the right variable. Let's actually try to send the domain just to see if it's, let's just see if the selected text is the issue or the request is the actual issue. So I'm going to try this again. So it seems like the request is the issue. So we're going to look at my other project where I have it all working. So what we have is the page load on page binding. We're going to set text. And so what we're looking for is the actual difference. And I don't think there's a difference. And what
I would love to be able to help you out on this, Dominic, but I don't see the difference. Maybe Suhaim seems also some experience.
So
but
what I'm actually going to do, if I just paste, I need to find somewhere to place this. So I'm just going to open my notes. So I'm going to test what the actual issue is, because I have one that's working and one that's not working. So let's test this one. Publish this. What I want to do is paste this. So if I test this, okay, so it received it from there. I received something. It'll be try again and tell it to listen again. I actually removed the Chrome extension. So what we're going to actually do is, because I have it here, I can jump over here. And I'm going to remove some of this so we're at the same place, because we know this one's working. So again, if I'm confusing you, please let me know. So what we have here is the webhook. And I don't actually need this, but I use this to extract the string. So what it sends is the selected test, but it sends a JSON file or JSON code. And just to show you what that actually looks like, I am going to change some of these settings so it looks similar to what it looked like before. And on this one, you actually be able to see what the selected text looks like before it's processed. So it's saying there's errors here. So I might actually remove this and then add it again. So I'm going to remove them. I'm going to export this again. And what we're going to do is just load that in again. Put that on our taskbar so we can use it. Head over here. There's something that's open here. So let's go to another. And so if we select this, we can see our Investopedia. You'll be able to see that in a minute, or we will remove it. But when I highlight this, what should happen is this is actually the highlighted text that it goes ahead and grabs. What we need is this bit. And we do that processing in Make. So we send it to Make get it here, and we go ahead and grab the selected text. So if we look back, where is it? If we look back here, you will be able to see selected text. So that's what we need. We just need this bit, which is a part of the selected text. And that's what Make allows us to do really, really easily. Then we want to go ahead and send this to OpenAI. It's as simple as, if I was to add another module in between there, just to show you how it is, I find OpenAI. You can do lots of different things. You can generate an image this way. You can edit, you can use the moderation technology, but we want to create a completion. What you then do is select your model, text DaVinci 003, you add your prompt, and you add the other details, and I'll just show you what that looks like when it's completed. Remember, we had a prompt that said that was the constant, summarize this text for a second grade student, and then we had the variable. In this case, our variable is selected text. Our variable is whatever the user selects right here. It can be on Investopedia's page, it can be from Twitter, it can be from anywhere you want it to be from. I generally leave these blank and I don't go into detail about what these are, but this will adjust the results, or this helps you fine-tune the results that you get. But typically it's fine. The last thing we want to do is create a table in Airtable. So we jump back to Airtable. What you would want to do is create a new base, but because I've already created a base, I will show you that base. So the first view I created has an ID, it has an input, it has a summary, it has a created time and created date. We probably don't need both created time and created date. And I can actually remove this here. If I can remove it, yeah, I removed that there. And so this is where we're storing our results, at least for now. There's lots of other ways to do this. You can store it in Xano, you can store it in other platforms, and then have Bildr, your Chrome extension, request it. But this is where we're going to store our results for now. You can see it's storing the input, it's storing the summary and created date and an ID, which is that's auto-generated. When we go back to Make, what we want to tell it is, after you've created the completion, after you've summarized whatever text I've given you, now create a new record in Airtable. So it's the same way. We would add another module, find Airtable, and we just select create a record. And we find our base. What did I call my base? Summarize. You find your table. And then you find where what you want to actually input. So if I show you the completed version, if we go here, you can see my input is selected text. And this is one of the reasons I love Make. So that selected text is from my initial webhook. But when we go to the summary is from OpenAI GPT-3. That's from this module. So you can grab different information from different modules, which means you can do really interesting data transformations, do really interesting calculations, and store the end output of all of that in your database. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about complex or advanced Chrome extensions, using multiple data sources, multiple services to generate unique pieces of data and give it back to the end user. The last thing we want to do after we do that is we want some way to render this in, if we go back, in Bildr. And there's lots of, and I'm just adding new components there, so I just need to delete that. There's lots of interesting ways that you can do this. I mentioned Xano. Xano is probably, for me, probably the most effective way and the most aesthetically pleasing way, but it's also a little bit more complicated. But what I've done, I just embedded the Airtable database into the Chrome extension. And to do that, it's very, very easy. You just find the element. There is a code element. You grab the code block element, you drag it into your page. And if we click on this, we can see I have a container and I formatted this. So this Airtable iframe, or this Airtable iframe is sitting inside a container that I've adjusted the width to 90% of the entire page width. So you can see I have some border. I put a margin between the top and here. And the way I do that, typically you can create a whole new class which gets into CSS, which is why this is low code, which is why Bildr is more low code tool. But I usually like to just adjust the inline elements because usually it's not much that I have to change. So I just adjust the inline and I put width 90%. I could put 80%. I could put 95%. And the spacing right now is 5% each side and 100 pixels from the top. But let's just go ahead and change that. We can just say 50 pixels from the top. It's going to put 50 pixels from the top. And what I want to do to actually embed this is I copied this view and I created another view. And the way I copied this view is just right click, duplicate view. And I copied it because I wanted to remove the what did I remove? The input on this view, and I just wanted the summary. I could remove the created day. I could remove lots of different information. I could add more information, but I wanted to keep it very simple. I click share view, and I can turn around. I can stop users copying data out of this view, but I wanted to embed in the site. And now it's given me an embed code. I like to use cards layout on desktop. And now it gives me this embed. I can make some slight adjustments. So I copy this code. I head back to Bildr, back to my element, back to my code block element. And I just go ahead and I paste the code right there, click save changes, and it renders automatically. Now, when I click publish, obviously this published already, but if I go ahead and click publish, your changes will show in real time. And if we actually refresh, we click this, you can see it's actually moved up a lot. It's going to move down because of the selected text. But you can see that shows. I don't actually have this running automatically right now. I turned it off at the beginning, but you can see when I click run once, it knows that there's things that are unprocessed. So if I run that, it's going to process that. It's going to add it to Airtable. If we jump to Airtable just to see it, What's the time? Okay, it's 8 o'clock now. It processes this right now. What number is it? It's 13. So let me just refresh. If I open this, I should be able to see. We can see 13. We can see the ID 13, and we can see the summary for the selected text. So there's lots of adaptability here, but what we've basically done, we have created a very simple Chrome extension. We have found a way to automate processes and make data manipulations using Airtable. We've connected it to external APIs, and then we've rendered the data, in this case using Airtable. You could use Xano or you could use another service, back to the end user. If we back to the end user, where the end user can now see this data. Again, there's lots of flexibility here, and it's probably best if you ask questions and I could probably answer your questions. But this is what we talk about when we talk about low code. This is what we talk about when we talk about advanced Chrome extensions. Really, it's about using third-party services and data manipulations to create creative data sets and really solve unique problems in a way that you can't really do it with no code. Does anybody
Awesome.
have any questions?
Awesome, Dominic. Thanks for showing us around in this this crazy build with all these tools involved. Really inspiring, and respect how how calm you stayed when things didn't work immediately. Really, really great. You can tell you do a lot of these kind of sessions in the way you present it. So credits for that. Great. Yeah, I'm not sure if people have questions. Perhaps Suhaim, I know you are building a mobile app. Maybe you're interested in this stuff too. So if someone has questions, and also people who watch this later on the recording, if you have questions, you can ask Dominic, of course, in our Slack community, and you are also on Twitter really active. So yeah, perhaps you can help. I'm looking at the chat. So yeah, Suhaim.
Yeah, the question I did have was, with all these tools, like you mentioned costs a few times, but I couldn't gather how much it costs, because I assume there is a cost all with the different tools that you're using.
So I have for Bildr, I have the studio. I bought at one time they did an NFT launch, and I think it was like £250 or £200, but it was using Bildr for life, like a lifetime account. And I thought, oh, Bildr's the only tool, and some people build Chrome extensions with Bubble, but I think Bildr's the best tool for building Chrome extensions. I think building Chrome extensions relatively easy. Out of building mobile apps and SaaS platforms, retention is relatively high with Chrome extension, and discovery, at least for those that know about Chrome extensions, are relatively high. So I thought that was a good investment. With Make, you can probably see somewhere, if I go back home, I'll save these changes. You can see in all the tutorials and stuff, I think somewhere I'm coming to my limit. I'm 70% used. I think that's within the last month, but this month's nearly ending, so not hitting that limit. If I had users, chances are I would hit those limits and I would have to pay to upgrade. But that's the cost of running automations. I think Make is a lot cheaper than Zapier, but those costs do add up if you're running these complex automations. And I mentioned the cost with OpenAI. So OpenAI cost is really cheap, but it still is a cost. So you can see this is image models. What one? You can see the cost right here. Very, very, very cheap, but it is a real cost.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just before we wrap up, I see in the chat that Colleen already started looking in OpenAI with Zapier and now is inspired by seeing the integration with Make. Has sparked some ideas. So of course, Colleen, that gets me curious. If you're open to share some of those ideas, I'm curious.
So they are interesting. So in some other tutorials, Colleen, what I've done, if I actually try and find it. So I deactivated all of them, but I did semantic search here in Make. Eden AI, I'm not sure if they have a service with Zapier yet, but Eden AI, I think, is the best tool for semantic search. So if you don't know what semantic search is, let's say you have a bunch of legal documents and we're imagining they're already been pre-processed. And that means if they've been broken down into paragraphs, that's easy for the AI to understand. If you ask it a question, it's going to bring you back the most relevant paragraph. And I think Eden AI is the best no-code tool to actually be able to do this. If we go to semantic search, if you was just doing this directly with OpenAI, you would have to use other rather complicated tools. So what it could do, let's say if you imagine a book, your favorite book, and we give it all the paragraphs in the book, we ask it a question, it's going to bring you the most relevant paragraph. And that's what semantic search does. And Make has made this really, really easy, where it might not be as easy with Zapier. I also believe Zapier, if you have multi-step zaps, it's a premium feature. I'm not sure 100%, but I think multi-step zaps and really complicated zaps start to get into the premium feature. Something like this, I have an iterator here that actually breaks up some of the, it basically formats the JSON in the way I want it to be formatted, so I can add it to Airtable. To do something like that in Zapier is a premium feature, whereas it's free in Make. And then there's another, I don't want to save. I've also used, yeah.
I was just gonna say, yeah, Make is definitely more cost effective than Zapier, but I sometimes like to, especially when I'm working with something new, to start with Zapier because I feel like it has some guardrails that Make doesn't have, and then move over to Make.
Definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. I felt the same. I felt it's interesting for me because I felt for some things I think Zapier worked really, really well. For some things I felt it didn't work as well. But I think you have to build enough to know where Zapier works and where it doesn't work, or where Make works or where it doesn't work, or even I have. So for the Chrome extension where I'm validating against CoinMarketCap, I use Parabola. That's what my go-to, because actually there's a lot of really complex data transformations that are happening because of how CoinMarketCap have their API set up. If I try to show you, and the data for transformations that are going on, I couldn't do. I'm not even sure if I could do it in Make. So let's see if I still have it. Hopefully I didn't delete it. Let's see. Okay, so I didn't delete it, but it's not what it should be. So we go to edit flow. Okay, yeah, it is what it should be. So lots of things are happening here. I'm pulling the data from the API. From the API, it comes in like this. This is not how I want it. I really just need the website name and the name of the cryptocurrency. That's all I need. It gives me all this other information. And so I have to then like flip the table. Okay, I have the table how I want it. I have to, what I think I did, I inserted the column, name website. I edited the columns. I'm expanding the JSON. and I think there's an error here. Yeah, there's an error right here. But lots of all of this I couldn't do in Zapier and I couldn't do in Make. And this is where I come to Parabola. And I think you only come to realize that if you kind of build lots of different stuff and you realize where the limitations of each platform is. The downside of that is I think using too many platforms, the more platforms you use on one given project, the more areas of like a failure there are. So that's the downside of using
Or
that.
me today
Yeah.
trying to figure out where one of my automations is and logging in from tool to tool to tool.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. So I've definitely had that before. Like I know it's working, but I don't know where the information actually is. And yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I usually try and have a field. I usually try and always update everything about like what Zap or and an ID. But there was one flow that I didn't have that. So, but yeah. So
Yeah.
no, thanks for the sneak peek of Parabola too. I haven't been in there in I've never really used it. So that was cool to see too. So thank you.
Yeah, it's probably just best for complex data transformations. And I'm not sure too many times when people are going to use that. Especially if you use Xano, you can do that natively in Xano.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
So it just-
whole it's a whole different space in itself. I saw one of the participants of the bootcamp using Xano. That could be a different workshop as well. So there's lots to explore. Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you showed. It's really inspiring, even though I personally couldn't replicate it immediately. But just seeing you doing it and also seeing you error fixing and things, it was really inspiring. So we can stay and talk after this, but mindful of everyone's time, I'm going to wrap up the recording here now first. This was the last session of the How I Built This series, which was great. We saw a lot of good builds, which all will be uploaded to Max, his YouTube channel. So everyone who couldn't attend, you can watch them back later. And if you have any questions about this Google Chrome extension, you can reach out to Dominic on Slack or at Dominic Norton on Twitter. And I'm sure he can show you way more of the possibilities because he's quite a wizard in this area. So thanks again, Dominic, and I will wrap up the recording from here.